Congratulations, dear Autocrat. You managed to play the card of populism successfully and become the leader of your state. Now begins your true task, not governing people, but engineering the environment in which their thoughts are formed. With this handbook, you will become the master architect of your nation's perception. Chapter 1. Controlling the flow without looking like you do. Before you can shape what people think, you must shape what they see. In the 21st century, blunt censorship is terribly outdated, as gauche as fact machines or honesty in most of politics. Modern propaganda thrives not by closing mouths, but by reinforcing only the right ones. The first step, therefore, is to monopolize information flow while looking like you're defending media pluralism. It begins innocently. Your friendly State Development Bank funds strategic acquisitions of struggling newspapers. Oligarchs who owe their fortunes to government contracts suddenly develop a keen interest in public broadcasting. Regulators issue broadcasting licenses, selectively of course, while independent outlets find themselves drowning in administrative paperwork or mysteriously losing advertisers. You'll never have to ban a single journalist. You simply make critical journalism uneconomical. It's not repression, it's market dynamics. Authoritarian innovators from Moscow to Budapest have perfected this technique. In Russia, most TV channels technically belong to private owners, but those owners somehow always think exactly what the Kremlin thinks. In Hungary, Viktor Orban's allies built the Central European Press and Media Foundation, an Orwellian name for an empire that swallowed nearly every national newspaper, all while maintaining the illusion of competition. In Turkey, Erdogan's loyal business partners own entire media conglomerates, yet the nightly news still insists they're independent voices of the people. Once your media landscape is tamed, remember that today's battlefield isn't just television, it's the algorithm. You don't need to arrest journalists if YouTube's recommendation engine or Facebook's news feed already buries dissent beneath a landslide of alternative viewpoints. Digital manipulation works through soft censorship, adjusting the discoverability of truth. If inconvenient facts sink while patriotically correct content from your own agenda surges, no, that's not propaganda. Let's call that algorithmic fairness. The tricks at your disposal are manifold. Safety rules, paid engagements, friendly regulators, blizzards of patriotic clickbait, shadow labeling, and silent emotions. How this digital puppeteering actually works is a whole art form. Don't worry, we'll dissect that masterpiece for you in another video. Make sure you stay tuned. Finally, allow a few critical outlets to survive, preferably with small budgets and limited reach. They serve a dual function, a fig leaf for your international image, and a diagnostic tool to monitor discontent. Western diplomats will call this vibrant pluralism. You'll call it free research. After all, even the best illusion of freedom requires the occasional dissenting voice, provided it echoes in an empty room. Chapter 2, Crafting Narratives, Not Facts. Now that you control the faucet, let's talk about the water itself. Propaganda in its modern, high-resolution form no longer peddles simple lies. That's for amateurs and dictators with medals on their chests. Today, the real power lies in narrative control, in framing the world so that facts become secondary to meaning. You're not here to convince people. You're here to structure their perception of reality. Every effective propaganda machine rests on master narratives, emotionally charged storylines that explain everything from inflation to football results. These narratives simplify chaos into archetypal drama. The pure nation betrayed by corrupt elites, the virtuous leader defending tradition against degenerate foreign influence, the misunderstood empire surrounded by hypocritical enemies. Once these frameworks are in place, no single fact can hurt you. It will merely be reinterpreted within the script. Cognitive scientists call this framing. Present a policy as security enhancement rather than surveillance expansion, and citizens will thank you for being protective. Psychologists refer to confirmation bias. People seek information that confirms what they already believe. Propaganda weaponizes that instinct. When your citizens' entire media diet is structured to feed emotional coherence rather than factual accuracy, you can safely replace logic with loyalty. The next step is to embrace relative truth. Totalitarian systems of the 20th century needed a single big lie. You, as an ultramodern autocrat, can do better. Offer many small ones. Encourage people to believe that everyone has their own truth. The goal isn't to make them believe your version. It's to make them doubt everyone else's. One's truth itself becomes negotiable. Power defines reality by default. This is a genius of post-truth politics. Facts are not refuted, they're diluted. Your propaganda machine should constantly recycle key themes. The West is criminal and decadent. The nation is under threat. Only unity under your leadership ensures prosperity. Apply them liberally to the economy, to foreign policy, even to sports coverage. Did the national team lose? It's because foreign referees hate your country's independence. Did inflation rise? It's because globalists sabotage your currency. The moral remains the same. You are both victim and hero. Of course, you'll need data scientists, not poets. Propaganda today runs on engagement metrics. You'll track which emotional cues, fear, outrage, pride, or others, yield the highest retention and click-through rates. Modern information control is a behavioral science project disguised as national storytelling. Facebook's algorithms, Telegram's channels, TikTok's For You page. They are your propaganda factories, far more efficient than any ministry of truth ever built. And don't forget the aesthetics. Words are secondary to vibe. Colors, music, slogans, all must reinforce emotional coherence. Propaganda is, in essence, emotional architecture, the careful design of collective feelings. Hope, stability, pride. Empty words, but comforting ones. When people feel rather than think, you've won. Chapter 3. Drowning opposition in noise. Once upon a time, autocrats feared dissent. In the digital age, they should fear silence instead. The modern propagandist doesn't censor. He saturates. You don't need to eliminate truth. You simply bury it beneath an avalanche of contradictory information until no one remembers what's real. Label your front organizations citizen initiatives. Populate your ecosystem with bloggers, podcasters, and influencers who swear they just ask questions. Their authenticity is your armor. This is the doctrine of informational flooding, the weaponization of noise. When an inconvenient story breaks, say, corruption the ruling party, your media machine should produce dozens of alternative narratives. You have your micro-propagandists spreading them voluntarily, working for likes and dopamine, because outrage is profitable. One claims the Western plot, another blames a rogue bureaucrat. Yet another insists the documents were forged by jealous rivals. Online, armies of bots and trolls will amplify each version until the public's cognitive bandwidth collapses. The point isn't to convince anyone, it's to exhaust them. Take the Kremlin's behavior after the downing of Flight MH17 in July 2014. Within hours, Russian state outlets were spewing competing explanations. Ukrainian jets did it. No, Ukrainian missiles. No, it was a failed attempt to shoot down Putin's own plane. Later, the story morphed into claims of CIA conspiracy, NATO provocation, or even that the aircraft had been filled with corpses long before takeoff. Each version was complete nonsense and even contradicted the last. But that was the point. Confusion is cheaper than credibility. The sheer volume of narratives created the illusion of uncertainty. And uncertainty is all a propagandist ever needs. Researchers at RAND call this the Firehose of Falsehood. It's high volume, multi-channel, rapid, and repetitive. Unlike old-school propaganda, it doesn't rely on consistency. Contradiction is a feature, not a bug. When citizens encounter 50 mutually exclusive explanations for a single event, they eventually shrug and conclude that the truth is unknowable. This is known as epistemic nihilism, and it's your best ally. Digital autocrats understand that people have limited attention spans and cognitive energy. The human brain, after all, evolved to detect tigers in bushes, not to cross-reference geopolitical claims. So the information space becomes a psychological assault course. Endless scrolling, constant outrage, permanent uncertainty. In that fatigue, your narrative, though absurd, feels like the only stable anchor left. Everyone lies, says the citizen, so I might as well trust my own government. Mission accomplished. To execute this strategy, you'll need infrastructure, troll factories and basements, paid influencers, anonymous Telegram channels, content farms churning out patriotic memes. Social media is your best camouflage. Every citizen becomes a potential amplifier. The algorithm, ever hungry for engagement, amplifies whichever message provokes strongest emotion. The lines blur between state and crowd, between propaganda and fandom. Truth becomes a statistical casualty. Censorship, by contrast, only draws attention. Nothing generates curiosity like a forbidden article. But overload people with data, and their curiosity dies of exhaustion. They no longer search for truth, they seek relief. That's when propaganda reaches its final form. Comfort. You don't have to force belief. You merely offer simplicity in a world that feels unbearable. Consider the success of Russian state media during the invasion of Ukraine. Not by silencing Western reports, but by surrounding them with a storm of alternative interpretations, some blaming NATO aggression, others claiming biolabs, others depicting the war as humanitarian rescue. When every version is available, none matters. This is your genius as a modern propagandist. You no longer need to build walls. You build mirrors. The more reflections, the more confusion, until people stop looking altogether. Chapter 4. Targeting the heart, not the head. Logic is a luxury. Emotion is power. A modern propagandist must understand that truth doesn't live in the neocortex. It lives in the amygdala. You don't win minds. You hijack nervous systems. So forget policy briefings and statistical charts. Focus instead on the primal emotions that have moved humanity since cave paintings. Fear, pride, outrage, and belonging. Neuroscientists call this the amygdala hijack, when emotional stimuli override rational thought. For you, it's not just a theory, it's a securing of your power. Design messages that bypass critical faculties and trigger visceral reactions. Use music that swells like a Hollywood trailer, lighting that glows like divine revelation, camera angles that place your leader slightly above eye level. The subconscious reads that as dominance and safety. In other words, build your propaganda like a Netflix series, binge-worthy and emotionally satisfying. Images of weeping mothers, proud soldiers, humble farmers, the emotional lexicon of the real nation. Always emphasize contrast. The loyal citizen versus the corrupt cosmopolitan. The heroic worker versus the lazy dissident. This isn't information. It's moral theater. Every news segment, every speech, every meme becomes an episode in a never-ending melodrama where you control the script. Remember, feelings outperform facts. A single image of your leader comforting a child during a flood will erase months of bad economic data. Fear sharpens loyalty, pride anesthetizes doubt, and anger creates community. The ancient Romans had bread and circuses. You, enlightened autocrat of the 21st century, have drone footage and national anthems in Dolby Surround. Propaganda, after all, isn't about making people love you. It's about making them feel seen. The moment your citizens associate emotional safety with your face, you achieve what every psychologist calls effective conditioning, a Pavlovian bond between power and comfort. That's not politics. That's pure neuroscience. Chapter 5, Building Enemies and Redirecting Hate. Of course, even the most emotionally saturated nation needs a villain. A population without an enemy is a population with questions, and questions are fatal to authority. So step 5 is simple. Identify, cultivate, and rotate your scapegoats. First, decide on your internal enemies. Intellectuals are classic choice. Too many questions and discussions, too few tractors. NGOs and opposition journalists also work beautifully. Nothing says foreign agent like someone who insists on transparency. Then come the minorities, small enough to blame, powerless enough to silence. Frame them as moral threats. Corrupting youth, undermining faith, spreading chaos. Hatred disguised as virtue is the most sustainable energy source in politics. Next, choose external enemies. A hostile world keeps the tribe united. The West, globalists, Brussels, Washington, any abstract entity will do. Their exact role doesn't matter. What matters is that they explain everything. Rising prices, foreign sabotage, election criticism, cultural imperialism, a bad football match, Western referees. The external enemy is the Swiss Army knife of narrative control. Every successful regime knows how to oscillate between the two, internal traitors and external conspirators. This dual structure ensures perpetual tension without collapse. The Nazis perfected it with Jews within, Bolsheviks without. McCarthyism replayed it with communists at home, Soviets abroad. Modern populists simply updated the software. Globalists and migrants. It's flexible, scalable, and endlessly renewable. The psychological payoff is immense. Fear unites more efficiently than prosperity ever could. When people channel their frustrations toward enemies, they no longer analyze systems. They perform loyalty. This is what political theorists call moral displacement, redirecting legitimate anger from the powerful to the powerless. And it works because it feels righteous. Beware of minor side effects. The hate you cultivate becomes your ecosystem. Once society internalizes fear as moral duty, empathy erodes. Rational debate shrinks. Violence becomes thinkable. The leader may survive, but the social fabric doesn't. Just ask Yugoslavia, Rwanda, or any society that learned too late that hatred doesn't vanish when its author retires. But honestly, why should you care? By the time the negative side effects become apparent, by the time the evil you create today consumes a nation, you'll probably have kicked the bucket anyway and be hailed as your country's great leader. For now, just enjoy the ratings boost. Chapter 6, Creating the Faith. The leader as semi-divine UX design. At this stage, facts no longer matter. You, the leader, are the message. Your propaganda graduates from persuasion to theology. What was once political becomes liturgical. Your job now is not to convince anyone. It's to inspire belief. Build yourself like a brand. Minimalist logo, recognizable color palette, and a mythic origin story. Have you been once poor? Emphasize it. Have you been always rich? Reframe it as destiny. Did you win a war, a lawsuit, or even a cooking competition? Perfect. It's divine providence. Modern citizens are consumers, and consumers don't vote. They subscribe. Surround yourself with semiotic rituals. The balcony wave, the tailored suit, the family photo with strategically diverse citizens. Every gesture must communicate inevitability. People shouldn't just support you. They should aspire to you. In psychological terms, you're cultivating charismatic authority, Max Weber's favorite kind of political hypnosis. The media becomes your cathedral. Your rallies are revivals, and your slogans, short, rhythmic, numinous, become prayers. We will rebuild, together forever, make whatever great again. The repetition activates what neuroscientists call semantic satiation, where meaning fades and emotional resonance remains. Eventually, the slogan doesn't say anything. It just feels right. Of course, you must still perform humility. A well-timed tear, a carefully leaked story of exhaustion, a photo with puppies or babies. Remember, the deity must be human enough to seem merciful. The audience must feel chosen, not conquered. Thus, propaganda achieves its mature form, a faith system disguised as a democracy. The ballot box becomes confessional. The people don't just follow, they worship themselves through their leader. Chapter 7. The Propaganda Feedback Loop. When the machine believes itself, and how to avoid final collapse. Now comes the phase every successful autocrat fears and secretly loves. When the propaganda machine becomes self-aware and starts talking to itself. At first, everything works as designed. Loyal journalists repeat the narrative. Influencers remix it. Citizens chant it. But then, something strange happens. The feedback loops tighten. Advisors no longer bring bad news. Pollsters massage numbers. The leader's public image replaces the leader's reality. Welcome to Hall of Mirrors. What started as manipulation turns into collective delusion. Officials begin to quote their own press releases as evidence. State TV cites online trolls, who in turn cite state TV. The system becomes an echo chamber running on autopilot, recycling yesterday's lies as tomorrow's revelations. It's the perfect self-referential information loop and a death trap. In this stage, even internal memos sound like propaganda. Decision-making collapses under the weight of performance. When a bridge collapses, when inflation spikes, when a pandemic spreads, the regime cannot respond honestly, because honesty has become treason. Instead, it doubles down. Fake news, foreign sabotage, historical destiny. The cycle tightens, the noise amplifies, and truth suffocates. Meanwhile, the population adapts. Citizens no longer believe. They pretend to believe. Sociologists call it doublethink compliance. People act loyal to avoid punishment but remain privately cynical. It's a society of actors trapped in a play whose ending everyone knows, but no one dares to announce. And yet, the irony is magnificent. The propaganda that once controlled the people now controls its creators. The autocrat becomes prisoner of his own fiction. But usually empires of illusion end the same way. Not with a revolution, but with exhaustion. The signs appear subtly. People stop clapping at rallies. The slogans feel tired. Even trolls lose enthusiasm. A scandal leaks, then another. The official denials grow absurd. We have always been at peace with East Asia becomes we have always had 5% inflation. The population laughs quietly, and laughter, history shows, is the beginning of freedom. What finally breaks propaganda isn't opposition. It's entropy. Reality seeps through cracks in the narrative like water through concrete. The war isn't going as promised. The economy isn't booming. The leader, once radiant, looks mortal on camera. And suddenly, belief collapses faster than it was built. The elite, once unified by greed, fracture into survivalists. Some flee, some delete tweets, some switch sides and claim they always had doubts.
I always had doubts.
The information ecosystem implodes. Rumors devour facts. Conspiracy replaces ideology, and the once mighty propaganda apparatus becomes a parody of itself. What you can do against this decline of your propaganda, dear Autocrat, is deceptively simple and entirely futile if misunderstood. Flood harder, but with finesse. Drown every crack with more noise, more spectacle, more contradictory truths masquerading as facts. Invent enemies faster than reality produces scandals. Celebrate minor successes as epical triumphs. Stage rituals of loyalty that make even the most jaded citizen pause, clap, or glance nervously at camera. Hire armies of trolls to argue with each other just enough to convince the public that disagreement itself is dangerous. And yet, beware, overreach collapses under its own absurdity. Too much spectacle, and even the most loyal will laugh at the theater. Too many enemies, and no one knows what to fear. Your aim is not merely to lie. Lies are cheap, but to consume attention, exhaust reasoning, and leave skepticism tamed, distracted, or bored. Every meme, every denial, every staged outrage must be perfectly calibrated to ensure that reality itself is the slowest, quietest casualty. If all that fails, there will be only one major exit, which is going to save you for sure. Start a war. Yeah, don't hesitate. Start a war to see your people reunite behind you. You've come too far to simply watch your reign crumble. History is full of good role models for you. From the junta in Argentina to Saddam's war against Iran. Moral objections shouldn't stop you, as morality has never been your strong suit anyway. Whether you save your propaganda empire or not, a generation will grow up allergic to all narratives, cynical of all politics. The post-propaganda landscape isn't enlightenment. It's nihilism. Social trust, long corroded, doesn't magically reappear. People stop believing not just in lies, but in anything. And so, dear Autocrat, your greatest victory becomes your legacy. A nation unable to believe in truth. Good job. You sacrifice your nation for your personal gain. But just don't worry too much about that. Pretty sure your sleep at night will be sound and safe. Chapter 8, Epilogue. How Democracies Can Survive. Here's the twist. The handbook you've just watched isn't only for wannabe autocrats. It's also for everyone else. Because often enough, democracy doesn't die in a coup. It dies in laughter, boredom, and apathy. When people grow accustomed to the quiet comfort of democratic institutions and freedoms, those freedoms stop feeling precious. We live in an attention economy where every cause competes with cat videos. Truth isn't censored, it's drowned. The line between journalism and entertainment dissolves, and the marketplace of ideas becomes a supermarket of distractions. In such an environment, Propaganda doesn't need to conquer. It just needs to entertain better than democracy can explain itself. The antidote isn't censorship or moral panic. It's literacy, not the ability to read, but to decode. Citizens must learn to spot emotional manipulation, to ask who benefits from a narrative, and to resist the dopamine rush of outrage. Critical thinking is slow, unsexy, and fatal to totalitarian glamour, which is precisely why it's revolutionary. Democracies must also rediscover the emotional language they've abandoned. People crave meaning, belonging, drama. If democracy speaks only in PDFs and press releases, while autocracy speaks in myth and melody, the contest is already lost. So, if you truly wish to defend freedom, learn from propagandists and then invert their logic. Use empathy instead of fear, transparency instead of mystery, humor instead of irony. Build narratives that unite without deceiving, inspire without enslaving. Because the final lesson in propaganda is brutally simple. Whoever tells the most compelling story wins.